What if I told you that behind one of gospel's most powerful voices was a man quietly breaking, a man who could electrify thousands with a smile on his face and thunder in his voice, yet behind the curtain, he was fighting a private war almost no one dared to speak about. Bishop G.E. Patterson wasn't just another preacher, he was the preacher, a towering symbol of hope, authority, and unshakable faith. But even giants have battles, and his story will change the way you see him forever. But you won't believe what Bishop T.D. Jakes just revealed about him. This isn't a story about sermons or songs, it's a story about secrets. Deep, guarded truths buried for years. Until now, it all began with a simple statement from Jakes. We all knew. 4 words that sent shockwaves through the church. What did he mean? Who knew? And most importantly, what were they hiding? Bishop G.E. Patterson had always been the picture of strength. His voice could shake walls. His presence could command any room. But behind that power was a man battling in silence. And the most chilling part? The people closest to him knew. They saw it. They lived it. But they never spoke. Then came Jakes's confession, pulling back the curtain on a truth no one expected. Patterson's struggles weren't rumors, they were real, heavy, and painfully human. While congregations shouted amen in the pews, he was sometimes too weak to even stand. His body ached, his health was slipping, yet he walked to the pulpit like nothing was wrong, because in his world, showing weakness was never an option. And now, the truth is finally out, and it changes everything. The fact that this story involved more than just one man's health sets it apart. This was about a system, an entire framework that looked to a man who was breaking silently for perfection. Patterson had serious health problems. Those who knew him well said that he suffered from severe illnesses that made it hard for him to travel and preach. However, no one had the courage to inform the world. People expected him to continue, so he did. Even while his own strength was waning, he carried the faith of a nation on his shoulders. The pressure continued after that. Conflicts over leadership also existed. He was challenged, debated with, and disagreed with by some inside the church. On the inside, there was tension, but on the surface, there was only oneness. According to T.D. Jakes, Patterson had to contend with disagreements from other church officials, some of whom disapproved of his style of leadership. His vision was not shared by everyone. These disputes weren't minor ones. Conflicts like these were what rocked the ministry's tranquility. However, Patterson never showed it, so no one outside the company ever knew. But let me tell you, the biggest weight Jesus bore was spiritual battle. It was more than tension or strife. Bishop Jakes said, Patterson's soul was engaged in a fierce, never-ending struggle. He battled his doubts. He battled fear. He battled times when he thought his faith was faltering. He continued to preach as if nothing were wrong. That's the bit that nobody discusses. Pastors are not invincible, despite what we may believe when we see them on stage. Since they are only human, the people who appear to be the strongest are oftentimes the ones battling the most difficult issues by themselves. When these personal conflicts started to intensify, destiny took a surprising turn. Even when Patterson's health started to deteriorate, he persisted. It became more difficult to control his leadership. He never backed down though, and his spiritual struggles continued to intensify. Nevertheless, he continued to appear each week, preaching, singing, and grinning. But he was slowly dying inside from the truth, and because of the way the system operated, everyone who knew, including Bishop Jakes, remained silent for years. Keep the image safe and hide the anguish. Behind closed doors, Bishop G.I. Patterson's family experienced a far different reality than the public, who viewed him as a spiritual giant. The amount of pressure they carried will surprise you. Let me tell you, his wife, kids, and closest aides were all stuck in a world where appearances were valued more than reality. They had to rush to change schedules and cancel plans each time Patterson's health failed him, all the while maintaining the appearance of ease, because the world's expectation of his strength could be destroyed by a single slip or error. At last, one family friend, who remained anonymous, of course spoke and said something memorable. The revelation of the truth was always just one terrible day away. The entire scenario was that precarious. No one ever cracked though. The most absurd aspect is that they did everything they could to keep him safe, but at what price? This is where things become even more intriguing. The aforementioned leadership disputes followed Patterson home rather than merely remaining in the boardrooms of the churches. His personal life was affected by the arguments, tension, and annoyance. He would feel misled, misunderstood, and devastated when he left meetings. He would then need to turn around, dress in a suit, and preach a stirring sermon as if nothing had occurred. Both his wife and children witnessed it, but they remained silent, because silence was secure in their world. This is the startling part, though. There was a significant emotional cost associated with this quiet and the decision to never speak. Patterson's family was doing more than just providing for a pastor. They were bearing the burden of a man who was about to collapse. They had to see the cost of a loved one's physical well-being, tranquility, and mental stability, all in an effort to maintain the appearance of a flawless leader. Insiders claim that on certain evenings he hardly had the energy to talk. But because people were counting on him and he refused to let them down, he nonetheless turned up and preached like a storm on Sunday morning. The fact that this narrative wasn't about scandal or hidden transgressions sets it apart. No, this was about spiritual pressure on top of human suffering. T.D. Jakes was explicit in his statement. We have to quit acting as though our leaders are unbeatable. He's correct, too, because the man within was gradually vanishing as the church community continued to commend Patterson's courage. I'll tell you something that not many people are aware of. Patterson came close to giving up at times, when the spiritual fight seemed to be prevailing, when the leadership strain got intolerable, and when the physical anguish became too much. But each time, he made the decision to keep quiet for the benefit of his people, his church, and his calling. That's the reason this is so tragic. He didn't have to endure suffering. Because he believed it was the only way to maintain his respect, he suffered. When Patterson's quiet turned out to be the thing that separated him the most, destiny took yet another unforeseen turn. He was kept in the dark about those who may have assisted him, and those who were aware remained silent. And behind that smile was a guy who was exhausted, worn down, and in dire need of rest, despite the fact that he continued to inspire millions, preach, and produce music. This brings up a painful question. If someone had merely spoken up sooner, may things have turned out differently? Could his soul have been raised, his mind strengthened, and his health improved? If he wasn't compelled to bear everything by himself, T.D. Jakes thinks the response is in the affirmative. However, that response was much too late. Bishop T.D. Jakes finally said what many had only whispered behind closed doors after years of silence. We were all aware that one phrase may set off a chain reaction. It was more than a private admission. It was an acknowledgement that there had been a serious problem with the gospel leadership for many years. It upset people, I must say, because if T.D. Jakes, one of the most well-known religious leaders, was aware of Patterson's suffering from the beginning, then who else was unaware and kept quiet? It becomes intriguing at this point. Jakes talked about more than just Patterson's difficulties. He used them to draw attention to a far larger problem, a culture of pressure, silence, and perfection that has pervaded the church for many years. He claimed that a lot of spiritual leaders today are hiding their suffering behind facades of perfection because they are afraid of being judged, of being perceived as weak, or of losing their respect. The most absurd aspect is that even a behemoth like Patterson couldn't break free from this culture. Jakes claims that this pressure originates from both the outside and the interior of the church. Pastors are more than just spiritual leaders in the modern society. They are social influencers, public personalities, and cultural voices. They are judged by whatever they say. Every error is enlarged, and Patterson was constantly in the spotlight. Therefore, he could not afford to make a single mistake. He was consumed by that pressure, not simply worn out. This is the startling part, though. According to Bishop Jakes, Patterson wasn't alone. He alluded to the identical experiences of other well-known gospel preachers. Most of these stories silent agony, hidden pain, secret conflicts, and the tragic truth will never be revealed because the church isn't prepared to hear them. Furthermore, a lot of leaders are too scared to speak. I have a question for you. When power turns into a prison, what happens? Even when leaders are obviously breaking, they are hailed as unbreakable. That's what happened to Patterson. He was unable to express his weakness or say, "I'm not okay," and that was the reason his struggle was so risky. He was stuck in the very persona that made him popular. During his address, Jakes made a strong statement. "Transparency is not weakness," he declared. "It's getting better." However, no one provided Patterson with that type of healing in his day. He was supposed to merely keep moving forward instead, regardless of how ill, exhausted, or shattered they are. He continued to do so until he was unable to do so. Once more, destiny took a surprising turn. Years of silence replaced what could have been a turning point. a time when the church would finally embrace honesty. Patterson was buried with his suffering, and it isn't until years later that we are beginning to unravel the burden he carried. It's no longer only about G. Patterson. This concerns any leader who has ever grinned while quietly collapsing while standing on a pulpit. It has to do with the high cost of acting as though nothing is wrong. And it's about the pressing need to establish a place where leaders may cry, talk, and seek support without losing their respect. Bishop G. E. Patterson's legacy remains strong despite everything he went through, including the pressure, quiet, and unseen struggles. Churches still reverberate with his voice. Millions are still motivated by his sermon. But because of Bishop T.D. Jakes' audacious admission, legacy came at a terrible price, as we now know. At last, the truth was revealed not to bring him down, but to reveal to the world what he had truly gone through. And believe me when I say that the truth is not only strong, but also essential. Because this narrative is unique, because it shows the human side of leadership. There was more to G. Patterson than just preaching. He was a parent, a husband, and a man in need of assistance, recuperation, and rest. He struggled, just like everyone else, but that didn't make him weak. Despite the discomfort, he persisted, demonstrating his strength. Here's the startling bit though. It should never have been necessary to carry that strength by yourself. T.D. Jake is now demanding a complete change in the way the church handles its leaders. We must stop creating platforms for ideal men, he stated. For those that are honest, we must create safe areas. He's correct too, because how many more people are still hidden if a man like G. E. Patterson, who is adored, respected, and loyal, is afraid to express his pain? How many preachers are heartbroken and smiling despite their physical and emotional weariness because they fear that speaking the truth will cost them everything? The most absurd aspect, I must say, is this: the leaders are not the only ones who suffer if the church ignores these unseen difficulties. The whole community is involved, because entire ministries crumble with leaders who fall silently. Faith is not protected by the pressure to seem flawless. From within, it destroys it. This is why this tale is important. It must thus be told. Jake has clarified another point. Going forward, he argued, we should embrace transparency rather than be afraid of it. It should be okay for leaders to admit when they're fatigued. They shouldn't have to worry about losing the respect of their people if they weep, ask for help, take a break, or seek therapy. Because being authentic, even when it causes discomfort, is what true strength is all about. And we ought to keep that heritage in mind. Not only was G. E. Patterson a preacher, but he was also a man who sacrificed quietly for what he believed was right. The leader with the anguish in his physique and the fire in his voice. The one who waited until it was too late to speak up for others. We now have an opportunity to do better since the truth is fully revealed. An opportunity to end the silence, remove the mask, and begin defending the individuals we admire. Because there's a person who needs love, grace, and understanding behind every stirring sermon. I want to hear from you now. What are your thoughts on all of this? Should churches do more to provide their leaders with spiritual, mental, and emotional support? Please share your opinions in the comments section. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth and authentic gospel tales, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it if this story moved you or opened your eyes. Because sometimes the only thing that can truly heal is the truth. Additionally, keep in mind that every leader has a backstory and is a human.